Hi, this is Don King.
And this is Mark Fuentes.
And we are here to help you go from stage to screen.
Or in my case, not to screen because you can't see me. I'm hiding today.
And why is that, Mark?
Actually, I'm running into all kinds of tech issues. It's been a long week. And of course, towards the end, my computer decides to stop working correctly. Don't know what the issue is, but I'm sure I'll figure it out, or I'll set the thing on fire and throw it out the window and get a new computer.
Well, and that's what a lot of our listeners here wrestle with, that same kind of frustration.
A couple of weeks ago, we had the privilege, the opportunity to visit with Becky Milam and Sarah Lethco to get some questions answered from the in-service session that we did on From Stage to Screen, being effective in virtual presentations. We had more material than what we could get in one episode. So part one aired a couple of weeks ago. We are simply taking the rest of that interview and putting it together for this one, which is part two of From Stage to Screen. Hope it's useful to you.
We've got guests on with us this week, and maybe they can talk about some of those frustrations. We have Becky Milam, who is Director of New Student Orientation and has recently learned that she will be having a new title, which I can't remember, but you can tell us what that is in just a second, Becky. And then Sarah Lethco, who is, I think of you as being Becky's right-hand person, but you've got a title as well. The reason they're guests on here with us today is because we worked together for an in-service session on effective virtual presentations. And we're going to be trying to deal with some of the questions that came out of that. And one thing that would be really quick for me to answer, we mentioned a control box that one of our trainers had used, Darren LaCroix, has he's spent, I think it was $150 or something on this thing. But to him, it's worth it because it gives him one-touch access to a lot of the Zoom controls, which reduces the awkwardness. Somebody asked a question about it being awkward to switch between this and that and the other. Whether it's worth the money to you or not, we just wanted to make sure that people had access to it. So let me share my screen here.
I didn't even know such a thing existed.
I've actually got three of them up here on the screen right now. What Darren LaCroix was using was this middle one, Elgato Stream Deck. And there is a spiffier one, but in the first place, I don't want to spend $250. In the second place, I just really don't need this much. This one has 32 programmable keys. This one has 15. The main thing is switching scenes. There's some audio adjustment that you can do here. I think for me, it would be worth the extra $50 over what this $100 one would do, because this one just has the 6 keys, etc. If you're doing this kind of thing all the time, it makes sense to invest in your tools to be more comfortable.
Do you know if it works with things other than Zoom?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's not designed specifically for Zoom, in fact. This is sort of like, it's more for video production in a small studio.
So are the programmable keys like keyboard shortcuts you would normally type to get to someplace? Or okay.
Yeah. In fact, I think, Mark, that's probably the most practical way to put it. Anything in a program that has a hotkey, you can put into that thing. Now, that means there's limitations because, like for share screen, for example, it has a hotkey, Alt-S, will bring up the screen. Alt-V is a toggle for your camera. That's something that's doable. On the other hand, those of you who've been in sessions with us, you know that we make use of spotlighting. So if we want to spotlight a particular speaker and make sure that that speaker is on screen for all participants, it makes sure that if somebody makes a noise or the dog barks, it doesn't steal the focus. There's no hotkey for spotlight, though.
Oh.
And so I could not put on that Stream Deck thing a spotlight control. Okay, so it doesn't do everything.
It occurred to me that would be so helpful if you're the only one managing Zoom and nobody can help you because
Yeah.
it's hard for me to stay on track when I'm doing multiple roles.
Well, and we've talked about that before in other contexts, Becky, that multitasking is more or less of an issue for some people.
Yeah.
We did the first of 6 classes through PACE, Pellissippi Academic Center for Excellence. Did the first of those yesterday, and it was very different for me from when we did our in-service session where we had like 6 different roles. There was one person that was watching chat and somebody who was in charge of spotlighting and that kind of thing. I was trying to juggle everything. And I think it worked okay, but I'm also aware that there were times when it threw my flow off. So yeah, Becky, I can see where having that control box would be that much more critical when you're doing it all by yourself.
It would be that much more critical for me because I'm not Dawn.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Becky.
There is a theory that multitasking is a myth, and Don, you and I had talked about that in an episode of Mobile Talk one time. So really, you're just going from one task to another, back to this task, back to that task. So the controller box is kind of like a way to make that switching from thing to thing easier.
Let's take a look and see what other questions there might be here. We have some folks who are making suggestions, such as use Camtasia to record your Zoom training so you can see the interface. One of the things that, and I commented to Becky about this, that at the end of summer, after all the training is done with new student orientation, I finally figured out how you can show your Zoom interface while you're on Zoom. And it's a little more involved than what I want to take time to go through here on this episode, but we will, from the show notes, we will link to a how-to on that. What it boils down to is that there is a setting for you to make in zoom.us with your account, and then there is another setting that you have to set within the Zoom client. But if you do that, then when you do the share screen, that is share the whole screen, then people can still see your Zoom interface, and you can show them, click here, do this, do that. So that's why that little comment from somebody about you could use Camtasia to record. In fact, I'll share one more little tip. Hardly anybody, it seems, knows about this outside the gamer community. But if you have a Windows 10 computer, and see, some of you are going to try this right now. That's perfectly okay. If you have a Windows 10 computer, there is a button that they call the Windows button. It looks like the Windows logo. You see it down on your keyboard in the lower left-hand corner. If you hold that down and tap the letter G, it starts up the game recording bar. Well, as far as Microsoft is concerned, what they're calling a game in this case is whatever is the window that's in focus when you start that thing. So you can record Zoom, you can record a PowerPoint, you know, whatever it might be. It is a quick way of doing a screen recording. And I think that would probably work for showing how to do some stuff in Zoom. Haven't tried it. It's a guess right now, but I've used it with other programs. So you can record any program using that gamer thing. One other little hint, where does the video wind up? Everybody on Windows 10 has a folder that is called videos. Within that is a folder called captures. And so anything that you record using the Windows key plus G is just going to automatically wind up in that folder. So we had some questions from folks about green screen setup. And I know, Mark, we can't see you right now because of the tech issues, but we've actually had some comments from folks about they like the fact that you don't have a virtual background because it's homey, okay?
It's messy.
Yeah, you know, it looks like the students do. I think everybody knows that this is a virtual background behind me. This is not my living room. This is what I wish my living room looked like.
I'm in the middle of a lot of things. I think I mentioned that in the first episode. We're in the middle of a lot of things, and stuff going on at the house is kind of paralleling the stuff going on at work and at the college and in classes. So they could see kind of things piled up in the back of the room with this big sheet over, with the big plastic sheet over it, because we've got work going on here, and so yeah, it's definitely homey, to say the least.
Yeah,
It won't be like that forever, I hope.
And-
At least not until we get things done.
Well, and you'll make a decision at a certain point about when you get things done. Are you just going to stay with the home background, or are you going to try to set up a green screen? Becky, I know you have recently invested in and put up a green screen. I love that field behind you there, but I know you're not out in a field. You made that decision because you and your husband are sharing workspace. So you got an actual green screen, I think.
The green screen saved all the relationships in my family. We are in a small room. We're sharing an office. My husband is behind the green screen on his computer. It's about 2 or 3 feet behind me, and then he's behind that. And until we had that green screen, this was a nightmare. I don't use the green screen all the time, and right now I'm having an issue with, I can't wait to figure out how to get the green screen to work in Teams. Works in Zoom, but not in Teams. But the green screen allows my family to go about their business, and they don't have to put towels up in front of them as they walk up.
Okay.
In Teams, there's, as far as I know, not a green screen option, but there is a virtual background option that you can use without a green screen. It's not
That's
as
what I have to figure out.
Yeah, it doesn't work as well as, I mean, and Don, you and I have talked about the advantages of green screen versus just a virtual background in terms of how sometimes it kind of sees through the virtual background, or things disappear in the virtual background, that kind of thing. But it's not perfect, but it works if you're trying to kind of blur out what's behind you.
Right. And there's an advantage-disadvantage thing there with Teams and Zoom. We actually will talk about that in episode 3, where we look at Zoom versus Teams. But we have to go back and explain that towel thing. You might have seen Sarah react to that. Now, let's say, Sarah, you've got a very nice home-looking background there. I mean, just from a background perspective, it works perfectly.
Thank you.
There are some challenges as far as it being in a home, and of course that's what our students are dealing with also. Okay, so just to give a setup here, your laundry room is to your left, correct? Okay, and that door behind you is the access to the rest of the house.
Yes, it is.
And we were in a meeting when your husband, who is a professional lumberjack, needed to come through and get a fresh shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than Zoom bomb the meeting and walk through shirtless, which we heard from some of the other meeting participants that they would have been okay with that. But it would have been, I guess we would say, a more standard distraction. So what did he do instead?
Instead, he grabbed himself a towel and came parading through the store over to our laundry with the towel held up over his head like this, so it screened him from being seen shirtless. So he just kind of scooted by me with the towel over himself and grabbed a shirt, and then got the towel back up and scooted himself out. But it was very embarrassing and a learning experience because I was in a conference with Darren LaCroix and a few other Ed Tate. So some big international speakers who are very famous, and I was completely red. And Darren LaCroix happened to be we were in breakout sessions, and he happened to be in my breakout session when that happened. And he thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. And I believe he has told everyone in the world about it.
In your husband's defense, I would have done the same thing. I would have done the exact same thing. Held the towel up, sneaked by.
I want one of the points I want to make just from a speaker standpoint is we always say when you're a writer or when you're a speaker, one of the good things is no matter what happens to you, it's fodder for a story. Mm-hmm. And so although it was embarrassing at the time, Sarah, it is a fantastic story. And
it looks so funny.
Yeah, and you got to make use of it. It also occurs to me that, I'm going to turn off my virtual background for just a second so that you guys can see. I actually have, as opposed to a green screen, I have a blue screen. It just works a little bit better with my lighting. And my son came through here to get to the kitchen, which is just on the other side of my screen. Becky, you were talking about your husband is 2 feet away. You know, our kitchen is on the other side of this. He had to get ready for work, and he came through. He was wearing a blue shirt that was the exact shade of the background. And so as he went through, nobody saw him, you know. And so, Sarah, if you ever get a green screen or a blue screen, just make sure he has a towel that is the same color, and we'll never see him.
Or just go to your own closet to get a shirt.
Mark, any last thoughts for our listeners as we get ready to wrap up?
I think the moral of all the stories is what we're doing here, working from home, is reflective of the times, and everybody expects odd things to happen. The occasional phone to ring, the occasional dog to bark, cat meow aggressively, you know, whatever it might be. The occasional sneaking spouse behind you with a towel. You just kind of go with it. And I think, you know, from a classroom perspective to our students, it just makes it, you know, more real and more human. And we're trying to deal with the technology like they are. So whenever something like that happens, when I'm teaching a virtual class, I just don't worry about it. And I say, well, guys heard that or you saw that or whatever it might be. As long as it's not horrible, we'll be all right.
Very good. For our guests, thank you for being here with us this week. Do you have closing thoughts?
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, I completely agree. It kind of makes us a little bit more relational because if we just roll with the punches and they're going through the same things, and it's going to help us connect with them. It's not going to hurt, I don't think, and just roll with it. That's absolutely great. Thank you so much for having us on here.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. So we will have episode 3. We will focus a little more on Zoom versus Teams versus Zoom. Get all my plurals and singulars together there. And we will continue on with helping you go from stage to screen.